Nice to see you. To see you, nice. Welcome to live stream. Hope you're all having a beautiful Sunday. Hope you're all having a beautiful Sunday. Sorry, I'm just checking the sound and everything is doing well. Yes. We are posting it on Facebook, very important. So welcome to live stream. If this is the first ever time that you've joined me live, then I will explain how it works. You ask questions through Skype and you'll find my Skype address in the box below. It's Lisa Cairns 12. And you can either send me a message or you can speak to me, but remember to use a headset with a microphone and have good internet quality. And you can also send me a message as well. I do these talks every Friday and Sunday at 6 p.m. French time, but always make sure that you check my live stream page on my website just to make sure that I'm here and doing it. Sometimes I'm off traveling or doing something else. I always like to start the talk with silence. I'm sure you come to used to this now. So just join me for 5 or 10 minutes sitting in silence. I dare you to join me. I'm just asking for a cup of tea. That's the way to do it now. You send people text messages. So what was the title again? What happens to me when I die? Yes. What happens to you when you die? You could say that, oops, death is right now. You could say that death is what's happening. sometimes it takes me a while to get speaking. So you could say, why would I say that death is happening now? So the question is who are you? Who are you truly? The mind projects images of other people and of yourself and of this timeline that you're walking through. So most people think they've come in, they've sat down, they're listening to me speak, and that there's somebody sitting here, whereas actually there is nobody sitting here. So you could say death is now because there's nobody actually alive. There's forms appearing, there's life appearing, but there's nobody life is happening to. And so all those people that you see out there, so your parents, your friends, your relatives, your neighbours, your enemies, you think of them as people and you have this image of them that you clamp onto them. So you've got your neighbour who annoys you. His name's Larry and he annoys you and he always speaks too much, and when you come out of your home you're always hoping that he doesn't come out and speak to you, etc. And he's plumpy or something, and he's a bit of a know-it-all, and he's from the north of England, and he is a truck driver, and I don't know, the list goes on. And you think that's him. You think that makes an entity that lives inside the body. So when you imagine him as this entity that's moving around. Whereas actually, you could say it's that personality that you project into him is as much him as, say, his skin. And you know that the skin is always regrowing and regenerating, and it's never solid. If we burn it, it grows again. That's the same with the personality. It's not a fixed thing inside the body. It's something that's always evolving and changing and appears only now. So say with Larry, he could be like a certain type of person with his wife. Say he's like quite narcissistic and dominant and bullying, but then at work he's a completely different character. And we struggle with that because we think it should just be one person. But our personalities are only appearing in what we respond to. There isn't a solid personality. We have tendencies and we have ways in which we are, but you put everybody in different situations and you'll find they always respond differently. There isn't a fixed person. So right now, when you look at me and you project onto Lisa, you think that she's a personality walking through time and that you know things about her. She's this way or that way, or nice or kind, or angry or grumpy, whatever it is that you project onto me. And you think that's me, but that's not who I am. That's an experience that's happening. Who I am is this stillness that is everything that's looking, this emptiness that's looking. And it's the same that way. So there's nothing here that's alive, but yet there is simply everything. So in one way you could say you are already dead because there is nobody here that is alive. Who is alive? Right now, who are you? You're nothing. You're total emptiness. What's happening in most people is our bodies have certain reactions and traumas and habits and conditions and way of being, and most people are attached to that and think that's who they are. So say now they maybe have a habit of having anxiety or something, and they believe that's them, that anxiety, that is who they are. They can't, it's not an intellectual thing, they can't separate it out. They just feel that who they are is somebody with anxiety that's looking out, and they just feel anxious. Whereas actually there is something that's prior to that, or beyond the anxiety. And it's at the moment they're clamped together, your essence and form and consciousness or presence or who you truly are is identified with form. Whereas that's not who you are. When you solely believe, so when you energetically are identified with being the person and you don't have a connection to who you truly are, then what happens is you become afraid of death. Like obviously the body is naturally afraid of death. Like I'm not going to go running into a fire or into a tiger's mouth. So naturally there is fear of death. The body is programmed to be that. But you get this existential fear of death because you believe that you're in relationship with others. But who are these other people? Your mother, your father, your friends have never actually spoken to you. They've only appeared to speak to you. You're only appearing to be in a relationship with them. In the actuality, who is it that's speaking? So now when I speak, you think it's me, whereas actually it's presence speaking. So in a way, you could say everywhere you go, everything you do is the same energy experiencing itself. And what you know yourself, your relationships to be and yourself to be, is a story running in time. It's not an actuality. I'm not talking about ignoring your feelings here and trying to push away fear of death. But it is simply a story that you're telling yourself, and it gets embedded into the body, these fears, these energies, these perceptions. It's just like now. So say if I got a letter through the post being told off about getting a big fine or something for something that I've done wrong, you know, driving or taxes, or what else can you get a fine about? Your dog pooping in the wrong area. And it's a big fine. And say just before this stream, I read the letter and I was like, oh, fuck. And I haven't exactly got the money to pay it. I'd have to borrow the money to pay it. That's going to create a discomfort in your body. So that might trigger, you know, like past memories of times that's happened. And that creates a discomfort in your body. You see it, you experience it, and then there's a discomfort in your body. And that's minor. So then, you know, in a few hours, that'll most probably go away and they'll be working out the situation. But originally there's a discomfort, and it could go away within seconds as well. But these bigger stories, so this story of death, so say you've been afraid of death for a long time, or you have hypochondria, this is something that builds over time. And it's something that plays in the background that you might not even be conscious of. And it might not always be there, but it's playing. And it's most probably related to some form of anxiety. Like, and it just gets projected onto that. Often that's what we do, is we have some form of anxiety appearing, and then we project it onto illness or death of people, or worries about work, or worries about the house, or whatever it is. Or your relationship. What else was I going to say? Yeah. Like, so it's I burped and then threw myself off. So it's like a form of anxiety that plays in the background. And so, and seeing that there is some form of story in there that you're attached to. So rather than it just being something that comes and goes through the body, there's some form of story in there that you believe it's true, and you believe it's you, and your experience, so the experiencer and that feeling come one and the same thing. And you carry it around from day to day. And it's just identifying those feelings and those thoughts. Often they remain hidden, and just seeing what they are and seeing that they're not true. Though there isn't people that die, that you do not die. You were never alive. Who is it that's alive? Who? Who is it alive? It gets darker now. You might think that that sounds like a bit of a like boring question, like you want to know how to deal with your feelings, or you want to know how to deal with this life situation or that life situation. But who is it that's alive? Who is it that's experiencing now? It's the most fun, what's that word? It's the most I've forgotten that word. It's the most fundamental question. That wasn't what I was trying to say. Profound question. Who is it? Who sits here? Who speaks? Who hears? Who looks? Okay, I take some questions now. Hey Clay, thank you for your question. Hello. How, when the body-mind mechanism is jammed or filled with a kind of plague, what is the solution to mind and body addiction to thought? It seems sometimes the addiction to thought, at least in my case, is cellular, and despite knowing all I know and knowing that I'm living in a kind of illusion, I have to live in this funny body that wants its way. So there's two elements to that. Is exploring on the human level what it is that your unconscious is saying, what it is your body's saying. What is your body saying? So looking at the chakras and understanding, you know, if you're in anxiety or panic or heartbreak or shame or fear, like knowing what you're feeling and relating it to the body. So understanding it on a deeper level. Often people feel anxiety and have rapid thinking, but they can't connect it to their body and what they feel and what's actually happening in their experience. And this relaxes things, like understanding yourself and relating it to your feelings settles things down. So that's one thing. But the other is disidentifying with the body. Like seeing that the body, mind, and the thoughts and the feelings aren't actually who you are. So even if you have heartbreak in your heart or fear in your sacral chakra, that's not actually who you are. I'm not talking about denying those feelings and trying to push them away. I'm talking about embodying them in the experience, like they're right here, right now, but seeing that that's not belonging to someone. Who you are is expansive and free, is the room, is the breeze, is the wall, the computer, the sound of my voice, everything. Like you aren't limited inside this body watching me. You are everything that's happening. You know, most of the time we walk around in these cocoons, like trapped inside, like I am watching Lisa, but you're actually my face, the sound of my voice, the wall behind. You're everything that's appearing. And there can be this energetic shift from being singular to being everything. And that does change these dynamics, but it's not so much about changing them, it's freeing you from them in a way. Like not stopping them, but stopping you being caught inside them and believing that's who you are. That's a functioning of a body-mind, but it's not you. Thank you for your question. Hi, David. Hi, Lisa. I'm watching your live talk. Rupert Spira says the body is just an appearance in the mind, and when the body dies, the specific activity of the mind disappears. However, there are remnants or residues from particular body-mind organisms. So, for example, attachment, certain predominant emotions such as grief or fear remain as energetic residues in consciousness, and that after initial initial dispersion will gather together again to form a new body or a new dream. Do you agree with that? Yes, that's the way the Buddhists see it, and that's the way I was taught, and that's what I feel is right. So karmas, genes and genetics carry on, which is what we experience in humanity. If you take out the religious side to it, you'll see that we pass on fears or dynamics all the time. Like when you're fearful and you're in front of someone, you're passing on just in this life, but also energetically when you die as well. Like what you are now is a collection of all of humanity that's been, in fact, all of life that's been. So the Buddhists believe in rebirth, or the Buddhists that I was into, some Buddhists believe in reincarnation, but the difference between reincarnation and rebirth is reincarnation is somebody that gets reincarnated, whereas rebirth is habits and conditions that get passed on. Hi, Catherine. Hello, Lisa. Greetings from Austria. I love your insights. They're so helpful. It always said that It is always said that when the ego dies, that is what appears. What does it mean? With love, Kathy. Hey, Kathy. It always says, sometimes people ask me, like give me really difficult quotes or quote other teachers or Ramana Maharshi, and they're like, what does that mean? I'm like, it always said that when the ego dies, that is what appears. That is what appears. I don't know what that statement exactly means. If I were to project onto it and try to extrapolate non-duality insight into it, I would mean when the ego dies, like what is what's left. Like what's happening is what's left. That would be my interpretation. Hey David, it's so funny sometimes on Skype. Like I get so many questions, I can't keep up with it. And then other times, I barely get any, I'm nearly through them all already. What is Satanism? Hi David. This is another one of those questions where I'm like, what is Satanism? I think it can mean many things. In life, I think if you translated it into non-duality, it would represent more than likely like the ego or suffering, or certain elements of the ego, like certain ways in which you're identified. But you know, I think that these things are metaphors rather than actualities. Like the Bible. Hey Joanna. Hi Lisa, could you talk about how to deal with the... You sent me a really lovely question this week. I'll answer this question and we go back to the other one, Joanna. Hi Lisa, could you talk about how to deal with avoidance of feelings and life experiences when sometimes feelings and life can be overwhelmingly and painful? Thank you. How to deal with avoidance of feelings and life experiences when sometimes feelings and life can be so overwhelming and painful. But before we get started, I would just say that I think that Osho chakra breathing meditation, I keep meaning to put that on my website on references. There is a reference page. So Osho chakra breathing meditation can be really good to shift different energies. Also the sound meditation as well from Osho on the chakras. You could do Kundalini yoga, anything that works for the chakras and putting the attention into the body. So my feeling on it is that all feelings are difficult feelings, and repetitive thinking is like a gift to help us expand. And the reason that we're getting stuck on particular feelings, I mean, it's different if you've got OCD maybe, but like OCD thinking, but for the majority of people, the reason that we're getting stuck on feelings is because unresolved issues in our unconscious. So this is separate from non-duality. It's also originally because we identified with the body, but once we're identified with the body, the reason that there's obsessive thinking coming is because of unresolved issues in the subconscious or the unconscious. And we don't know why some people have it worse than others. It could be karma from like what you were born into this life with. That's nobody's karma. It's not saying that anybody's guilty if you've got very difficult unconscious. But it's just something that happens. And sometimes it can be from trauma, so really difficult experiences that you have in life you get stuck on. And there's so many therapeutic exercises out there, and some work for some people and others work for other people. There can be drugs that work for some people, like medications. There's such a variety. There's no one way to fix it. There's loads of different information and different ways to do things. But I like the chakra meditations. And my favorite way of working with the body-mind, and the way that I do it in my sessions, is that you go into the feeling in the body. So you have repetitive thoughts going on, and you try to identify them. So you try to catch them and see patterns, and everybody will have patterns, and it will just change. So say if you're someone with anxiety, you'll just keep jumping from one thing to the next. It'll be this bill, it will be that phone company, it will be because your neighbours did this, because your neighbours didn't cut a tree down, because this person swore at you in the car, because your ex did that, or da 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 da. It will just, the mind will just keep going on. And the reason that it becomes deceptive is because there's so many different situations you can project on. You can't see what the common denominator is in all of them, and it might be like anxiety or fear that's arising. So you try to identify that, and then once you've identified that, you try to see if you can place it in the body. And if you can't, the chakras actually are really they normally fit a specific rule. So if it's something like fear or anxiety, it tends to be in the root, the sacral, the solar plexus chakra, and you give that energy space. So you're having anxiety, say, about something your neighbour did, that they, I don't know, didn't cut down the trees and it's falling into your garden or breaking your fence or something, and you keep having repetitive anxiety thoughts about them and about what they're going to do and what's going to happen. And then what you do is you pull it into your body. So you see that that's arising in the sacral chakra, for example, and you pull your attention into your body. So the story is going off about the neighbour, and you see you've got anxiety, and it takes some surrender, because you want to maybe blame the neighbour and be like, so you pull that into your being, and you surrender and see, okay, we're just going to give up blaming the neighbour for a moment and see if there's something different, deeper. And often we don't want to give it up, but once you can go deeper and see, okay, there's fear in my body. Do I do this with other situations? And then try to name other situations where you're having these fearful or anxiety thoughts. And then try to take it backwards in time. So try to see, when there was big experiences like that, did you have a terrible experience in your childhood where something really made you afraid? Were your parents experiencing lots of anxiety? Like where was that in your past? How did you learn that? Or when did you first experience it? And there's no resolution. You're not trying to come to a point of getting rid of it. You're just exploring that and understanding it. So then the next time, it's like a process. The next time that you're like the neighbours and you're going off on one, you remember the other day that you sat there and you explored those feelings and you connected it to this deeper place. And you connected it to your past, and then your mind is like, in that situation, it's still wanting to go off on them because this will give you endorphins. It's like an addiction, but you're also like, okay, so it's not necessarily about that situation. There could be some days when I'm not suffering about the neighbor and they're still doing the same thing and they're still there. So then you begin to disconnect from it being about that particular situation. It's not that you don't practically deal with the neighbor, but you begin to see that your mind activity isn't necessarily because of the neighbor. So then you do all of this and you explore all of this. And then when you're ready, when you've really sat with that and you really give it space, you begin to imagine what is it that you would like to experience with your neighbor. And this is like the healing part where you begin to turn the chakra. But you have to do it when you're ready. You can't do it prior to being ready. I know it sounds weird. I can't tell you when you're ready, but you just begin to feel when that chakra is ready to move. And it might, be days and days and weeks and months and years even that you have to like allow that to sit there, that fear and anxiety, and explore it. And it will come and go. It might not always be there. But then there'll be a point where you're ready to move it into something positive. So then you ask, what is it that energy wants? So rather than it being about the neighbor, you've got down to the very basics of that fear. And what is it that energy wants? And you might say power, security, strength, love, safety. And you imagine all of that, and you imagine times maybe when you have experienced that, and you imagine evoking that into your life, and it will begin to make the chakra vibrate in the positive. It's not that you want the chakra to always be vibrating in the positive and for you to always be imagining that. It's just helping bring the chakra out of that so it can then rest in neutral. So you're bringing it to the more positive energy. This is quite difficult for people to do, and that's why I think that doing the chakra meditations is also good, because that's a very deep exercise to do. And you'll begin to feel the positive vibration of it. And it's not so much like what is it that you want. You can name that you want the neighbor to come around and apologize, but normally there's deeper things than that, like you want safety and security and appreciation or love or whatever it is. So it's trying to come back to those basic feelings and allowing that energy, and know that you are allowed that. You are absolutely allowed all those things that you name. And then this is a healing process. This isn't about non-duality. This is just getting the body to a more balanced, healed place. The reason that it's most probably got out of control is because you're identified, but it's just coming back to dealing with that. And then we'll talk about non-duality separately. So all of that done. And then once that's done, once you've been exploring that, you can or at the same time, you can also say that is not who you are, but not as a way to avoid the feeling. Like seeing that these feelings arise in freedom, inner freedom. This discomfort arises in freedom. There is something that knows that. There's something that's always present that never leaves. But what is that never leaves? There's this presence that's always home, no matter what happens. So seeing that, but that's the way that I work with difficulties. So you wrote another question in the week and I told you to send it on Sunday. So hi Lisa, I've watched so many of your videos and after listening to you, my eyes opened to so many things. It seems like I had a completely false view on enlightenment and enlightened people. I used to put enlightened people on a pedestal, imagining them being better than a regular person. I also had this preconception that enlightenment frees you from karma and you become this perfect being walking perfection. Joanna, I'm really happy that from watching my videos, this is something that you're reflecting back to me, because what that's saying to me is you're getting to the place where you're beginning to stop seeing enlightenment as something that is beyond you, and you're beginning to pull it in yourself. So it's not about being this perfect person and getting to this specific place. You're pulling it and owning it in yourself, and that's super beautiful. Because if this person, this enlightened person, has to be like this walking miracle, it's something that you'll always be seeking for, because you'll never live up to that, because it's impossible for any human to live up to that. Every human can be a bozo. Every human can do shitty things. It's part of life. It's impossible to escape it in this life, doing shitty things. Like all of us have that, and it's actually coming to peace with that and holding that and like loving that as well, seeing that enlightenment holds the dark and the light, and it's not about morality, it's not about perfection. That's all in the human world. What is beyond that? This would explain a lot about Osho, who possessed such a great wisdom, yet at the same time he was such a troublemaker. I always wondered how that was possible. Now I know why. Your personality doesn't disappear miraculously, and you're still the same person, yet not at the same time. It makes sense. Yeah! Tick, 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 tick. I feel like one of those seals, like clapping their hands together, like... Bah, 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 bah. My question is, why to even wake up, since nothing changes except that you're the same of who you really are? Does enlightenment free you, really? Does enlightenment free you from suffering, or you still suffer, but you have a different perspective about what you are experiencing? Is it possible to be enlightened and depressed? I don't know if it's possible to be enlightened and depressed. I don't really experience depression. I'm quite a vibrant, if you haven't realized, character. That was what really my tendency. I don't want to sell you enlightenment. There is just something happens, an energetic shift that is, if you haven't experienced it and you don't know what I'm talking about, there's this energetic shift that is beyond what you can imagine. Like when this shift happened to me in Bali, I couldn't believe that something like that could happen. It's become really normal now, but at the time it was so shocking. I couldn't believe that experience could be so different. And it's really magical, but it's not really something I can explain to you intellectually. It's not like a behavioral. At first I put it to behavioral things because it changed certain behavioral things in me, but it's not. Then after time, those behavioral things came back to an extent. And then other ones came in, and then they went, and you know what it's like being human. It's beyond anything that you can describe in the human world. Maybe make it sound too dramatic. I try not to big it up too much, so it doesn't become a new thing that's like impossible for you to get to. That's what the mind always does, is it takes these words and then makes them really great and really like out of your reach. So I try to dull it down a bit. I don't know if that is a good thing or a bad thing, because maybe like if I spoke up more, then you'd vibrate with that, like it's like an energetic thing. But I always feel compassion for people to not like keep going on about it. So yes, I would say it's well worth it, but it's not a human thing. Ce n'est pas personnel. Hi Lisa. Hi Nick. Hi Clay. Dude. Yes, dude. Maybe I should do like a knuckle bump. I literally can't believe you're talking to me through YouTube. There was no way I had any idea that I'd end up watching you or messaging you. Thank you for your response. I think I just have ideas stuck in me, and it's the dance of forgetting and remembering and trying to stay on the path. It's a long and I guess shared experience. I like it when you stop talking and let silence happen. Happy I happened upon your talk. Nice, Clay. Hi, Kat. Hi, Lisa. I never get an answer for the who question, but it feels like the body-mind who sits, speaks. Yeah, that's what it feels like. But if you come like directly into experience, you'll see that's not the way it is. And there is an emptiness beyond that majority of time, but not yet a certainty of that being what I am. Yeah, nice. Hi, Yadik. Do you still have human longings, like having partner, children, family? Sorry, it's too much personal questions. Yeah, to an extent. Not those particular things, but yeah, there's human longings, but they don't seem to extrapolate that much into time. Or maybe longing's too strong, like you are where you are. But yeah, there's certain desires. Hi, David. I have another question. Yes, David. Is identification and therefore experience only possible through a physical body, or can experience go on in a subtle or mental body after falling away of the physical body? Is there something like a subtle or mental body that is independent from the physical body? It's unknown. I don't know. I know that who you truly are never dies, but after death I suspect that conditions and habits carry on, and karma, but not a somebody. Shatil Kuma, thank you for the live streams. With pleasure. What's your story? Did you go through hard times? Do you have a kid? Have you got some mother things you want to project onto me? Am I a mother? Is not chakra just imaginary, a tool for focusing on specific things? Everything's imaginary. Like everything. So yeah, obviously, but it's a tool to work with your system. Like everything's imaginary. But you see, that's where it depends on where you're coming from. Like saying everything's imaginary from some perspectives can be really beautiful, but from some perspectives it can be a way of avoiding feeling. And this is about incorporating everything. What the separate self or the identified self does is it's always trying to avoid what it's experiencing. So it's always seeking for a better future to try to avoid what it's experiencing now. And what I like about the chakra system and coming back into the body is what's happening now. It's what's there. So yes, it is imaginary, everything imaginary, but it's what seems to be there. And it contains these specific feelings. Sometimes people want to skip to the end and say everything's imaginary, but they're like suffering and seeking and got lots of like mental delusions. But I don't know the place that you're at or what's happening for you at the moment. What's your story? There is many, many stories in which I could tell about myself. I am very, very old, thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's endless. I've been every story. I've been every character. So, you have to ask specifically what story you want, whether you want the awakening story, the suffering story. Oh yeah, did you go through hard times? Do you have a kid? I have a dog. I substituted kids for dogs. I have a dog. And did I go through hard times? Yeah, I did. I suffered a lot from about the age of 8 or 9, 10, 11, somewhere around that. I can't really remember that well, till about the age of 30. There was lots of suffering that went on. Lots of different things. As a child, I'm sure there was suffering and difficulties as a child, but I remember being quite a happy child. Like I was really innocent. And I remember thinking like the world was so beautiful and yeah, had quite like an innocent outlook on the world. And I was so proud to be English or Scottish, both British, I should say, actually. Nick, a while ago you mentioned that getting really angry at someone is a form of abuse or violence towards the person. It's pretty much made impossible to get really mad anymore. So wonderful, thank you. But the reason for getting angry doesn't go away. It's just now, instead of being angry, it's more like severe annoyance in the body, typically solar plexus, which goes away after a few hours, but it's pretty uncomfortable in the meantime to others too. Typically the cause has something to do with fairness, right or wrong. Any suggestions beside going for a walk? Asking who is annoyed helps, but physical sensations in the body doesn't disappear, just the feedback loop isn't there. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I didn't mean to shame anyone by saying that it's abuse or a form of violence, and you know, I don't mean to like point fingers, because I think a lot of people can get angry. I know I certainly can get angry and lose my temper, but understanding that it is a form of abuse, like shouting at people, and when you begin to do that, that it is turning into a form of abuse, even no matter how justified it is. Like when you lose that temper, you are doing that, and it's not the appropriate way to behave. And learning that is really helpful for the mind. But I'm not meaning to shame anyone there, because I think a lot of people lose their temper. It's not always easy being in personal relationships. So I think there's lots of things that need to happen in that situation. Is you need to understand why you're getting angry. So writing it down and engaging in your emotional arcs or your emotional movements. So why it is that you're getting angry with the other person, like what it is that they're doing that makes you angry, and maybe keeping a note of it, like really giving an investigation into this subject as to why anger is arising, and making a note of it, and writing down, you know, where you feel it in your body. So anger is a really interesting reaction. It can happen for many reasons, and I'm not an expert on it. I'm just giving you information from my perspective. So I've mostly told everybody this hundreds of times before, but I used to get angry and like scream and shout, and that was how I was brought up. That's what happened in my household very often, is there was lots of screaming and shouting. So when somebody got angry, like rather than talking about it or sulking, although there was sulking as well, you predominantly resolved it by screaming. So as soon as you've got to the screaming stage, your negotiation has completely broken down, and you feel that's the only way to resolve the situation is to scream. And that might be, or shout. You might not be a shouter, but to whatever it is. So I'm just talking in general. I don't know what it is that happens for you specifically. So say in those situations where I used to get angry, say with my dad, and start shouting at him, like my negotiations failed. And it's understanding what's happening in that circumstance, because it's not like, I don't believe that people have like I think personalities, that you've got personalities that are more fiery than others, but I believe like anger tantrums and screaming and shouting is generally something which is taught to us, and it can be undone by understanding the mechanism, and there can be a reduction of that anger when you understand the mechanism of it. But it's a habit, and it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. So say with my dad, I'm just thinking about when I was a child, like I used to get angry with him. Predominantly, I used to get angry with my dad, this is going very personal, because he would shout at me. So we would be doing an activity together, and then he would lose his temper with me and really like be very aggressive with me. And then this would like spark in me, and then I would scream back or something, or have a tantrum. I'm sure there was other reasons as well, you know, when I didn't get my way and everything, but that was the main reason. So what happened in that dynamic is that he initially crossed my boundary, you know, so he would want to work and do something together, and then he would shout at me, and then he would cross my boundary, and it would make me feel very vulnerable. So as soon as he did that and shouted at me, I feel vulnerable and afraid, and then what kicked in was anger to match that, like a shouting back to match that. And that was something I was taught. That's just one example. When I was in relationships in my 20s, you know, I used to get angry for a variety of different reasons. The reason that I use myself as an example is it's easier for me in talks. Like I could also use clients, but like that's what some people do, is they talk about people they've worked with in the past. And I could do that, but I always feel like I'm exposing people. I could change their name, but it's easier to talk about myself. So then if I think about like the 20s, and when I was in relationship, I think often what I would get angry about is like distrust and not feeling heard. So they would do an action, and it would spark fear in me, and I would not trust them. And then I would confront them about that, and I ask them about that, and they would deny it. And then as they kept denying it, and as the argument went on, I would get more and more angry, because I felt like they weren't listening, or I felt like they couldn't hear what I was saying, or I felt they were lying or being deceptive. And as I couldn't communicate that, it would get me more and more angry. And there's so many things in that I learned. Like, first of all, you don't have to have other people to understand your perspective. So in that situation, maybe that person was being inappropriate, but then I wanted validation for that person being inappropriate. So then I wanted them to say, oh yes, I was lying, or I was being dishonest, or there was something bad I was doing, but I didn't want to admit it or something. And that's what I was looking for, is that I was wanting them to say they had done something wrong, because I was experiencing distrust, and the distrust was uncomfortable. And then I wanted them to admit it to make me feel more secure. And then as they didn't, it made me feel more and more insecure, and it crossed my boundaries, and then anger would begin to come up towards them. That's just an example of something. So there can be so many different reasons. There could be, like, if I look at other people that I work with, there could be this sense of superiority. There could be this sense that the others violated you. There could be the sense that of shame coming up. So when somebody does something, you feel that they're putting you down, or they're persecuting you, and there can be shame that arises, and then that can cause anger. The only way that you can discover it is by keep making note of it and keep putting attention into the body as to where it arises from. And then you have to begin to connect it to past experiences that you've had in different relationships or in future relationships. But the key, the first point now, is to find out exactly where it happens. So the solar plexus, you say, and then connect it to other times that you're getting angry in the past. So what is the theme to it? And when did that start? When did you first begin to feel that? And you need to identify what game the other person is playing, because just because you've been angry doesn't mean that the other person wasn't playing a particular game in there. This is why couples therapy is fantastic, because then you get really a chance for an outsider to observe the games. Like, what was the other person doing? Was the other person winding you up? Were they doing it intentionally? Like, were they gaslighting you? Were they being provocative? Were they lying? Are they being intimidating? Were they saying one thing and meaning another, passive aggressive? So it's also paying attention to that. And then, as I always come back to, and then when all of that's happening, so this investigation is going on, seeing at the same time that there is nobody that's doing that. There's nobody that's experiencing it. So that's happening, this investigation is happening in freedom. So you've got this tightness in the solar plexus and this fire happening and running through your body. And at the same time, that's happening in an infinite space. That's happening in something that's still and free and open and expanded. Like that's not you. Like you're not the one that's angry. It's a happening. Okie dokie dokie dog. Thanks, Nick, for your question. Why the mind wants to ask questions? I don't know, Golden English. Why does the mind want to ask questions? You're the one asking the question. Oh, we've spoken a lot before. So I don't know why the mind asks questions. You tell me. What is the point of it all when there is actually no answer for it? So much energy is used for the mind, and what's the point? I think there's no answer to what the point is, but I would just, in my argument, like to say, notice that the mind made up meaning and point. So the idea that it's got to have point is also made up and fabricated. So to be like, what's the point of asking all these questions? That you're fabricating the meaning of point. You're fabricating the meaning of meaning. That there has to be point, that there has to be meaning, that there has to be something to get to. That's a human dynamic. That's a human thought system. It's not an actuality. Thank you, Golden English. It does sound like there's a little bit of depression in that. I might be wrong. So just notice that, what is this thought saying? What is being my illusion? Hi, Paul. Hello. I just checked the microphone works. Yes. I'm so sorry. Hello, Lisa. This has been such a great session because so many questions I wanted to ask have been asked by others and you have answered with such wisdom and love. Thank you. Oh, nice, Paul. It's a collective talk. I like the cooperative. Hi again. I get confused when speakers talk about being a human and not the human because it seems like two dualities. Could you explain this any more, please? Yeah, it seems like that. It seems like that in a picture or a painting, though, that there is like a person riding a horse with a sunrise and hills and mountain and beautiful clouds that are pink and trees. It seems like there's lots of different objects, but it's all made from the same paint. It's all made from the same colours. There's not actually separation, it's like one painting. Maybe that wasn't such a good metaphor. I try my best. Yeah, the same as a TV show. And it seems like there's a character moving through the screen and moving through the environment in the TV, but it's actually colours flickering which give the appearance of that happening. Just 3 colours: green, red and blue. Three colours flickering and moving together to create the appearance of somebody walking through a world and having experiences and talking and riding their horse and their bicycle and their car and their cart and their spaceship. Hi Lisa, is enlightenment predestined? I don't know what really everybody means by predestined. Like, I understand the words, but I don't know what that means to everyone. You could say enlightenment is always happening. Like, the idea that you're asleep is only an idea for the person. Consciousness, your essence, is always free. So it's always happening. But you could also say that the recognition of that, or that shift, is grace. It's not down to somebody's efforts. I have to just get the plug. Hello. Hi Thomas. Whoa. How identify and empathize with your patterns from childhood in terms of relation and anger, etc. You have no idea. So good to be able to see it from a bit of a distance now, not striving to accept or validate from others anymore. Yeah, nice. Like a point after which, this is from David, there was no going back. I once had this phase in my life of extreme expansion, and I was filled with vibrant aliveness, love, and oneness, which just grew stronger and stronger, and at some point it was like I was approaching a door, and it felt like I went further. If I went further, it would be the end of everything, of the character David. I would not be able to talk, take anything with me on the other side, and it felt like there was no going back from there, like infinity was waiting for me, and there was a deep longing for it, but also fear and terror, and I didn't go further. And since then I blame myself for it, and I feel like I've rejected my true nature, because as a result the oneness of love withdrew, and I fell back into a painful sense of separation. Yeah. And so maybe that's your karma that this life is begging you to work on, is blame and shame and guilt. Hi Golden English, thank you. Hi Jordan, thank you for the talk. With pleasure, Jordan. Hi David. Lisa, you said that you are old, different lifetimes. By this you mean that is something like a soul? What's next for humanity from your understanding? Oh no, I was only playing with you. I mean, I am old. I was meaning it more as like consciousness and aliveness and stuff, not as Lisa the person. I don't know what's next for humanity. We shall see. We're all watching. Hi Tanya. Thank you for your words about anger. I see myself in that. I've learnt from my mum to only scream in conflict, and I can't get rid of it, so I avoid any form of conflict completely, because I have no alternative to screaming, and I don't want to scream at people. So I just walk off, saying nothing, leaving the room, like my dad used to do. Sometimes I write the people an email I have conflict with, because in writing I can explain it better what I feel, but especially in the workplace this creates problems. Experts always tell me to solve conflict at work, not by email but personally. But for me, as a person with autism, Asperger's syndrome, writing is just a better way. I can't get angry and scream at someone when I write, So it's a safe form of communicating what I need. Tanya. Hi, Tanya. Yeah, experts might say do it face to face, but maybe only do it face to face if the expert is there with you. If not, writing an email is a good way to collect your thoughts and feelings. Like another way you could do it is maybe not with your work colleagues, but maybe with someone at home, is have a therapist that you bring them to, and you try to speak to them in front of the therapist, so the therapist teaches you. But yeah, I'm not opposed to the writing email. I can understand they say do it face to face, but I mean, we're complex beings, especially if you've got autism and Asperger's. There's a question below as well. I think you overread it. It was related to what I described about my experience. In the process of awakening, was there one specific moment or experience of death of the person? There was many, and then one big one. But it's so different for everyone. I talk to so many people around the world, and some people it's just like a gradual dissolving, and some people it's like shocking moments like that. I think that's maybe enough for tonight. I've talked and talked and talked. Okay, guys, thank you very much. I wish you a very beautiful evening. And if you want to join me next week, it's Wednesday at 6 p.m. French time. Thanks, guys. Goodbye.